Welcome to my home in the great state of Minnesota in the best country of the world, the United States of America. Now, you're probably thinking that after long winters of freezing temperatures and plowing snow and shoveling our sidewalks, salt everywhere, that we'd be tired out. But we got great outdoors, we got superior medical technology, we got great architecture, and we got amazing arts. Then, that we have a lot more than that. Minnesota has a lot of stuff to offer, and if you keep listening, you'll figure out what.
Minnesota is the most northern state in the 48 continuous states. This includes the northwest corner in Lake of the Woods. Minnesota is known as the land of 10,000 lakes. After all, it is our state slogan. But did you know we actually have 11,842 lakes? Each one of those lakes is over 10 acres in size. That gives us more shoreline than California, Florida, and Texas combined. You can never run out of lakes to enjoy here, and there are multiple ways to enjoy them, such as swimming, tubing, boating, jet skiing, kayaking, anything you want. Another common Minnesota lake pastime is fishing. According to the Northwoods Minnesota website, fish you can catch here include northerns, muskies, bluegills, perch, and many others. Did you hear that? Did you know that Minnesota waters flow outward in 3 directions? They flow north to the Hudson Bay in Canada, east to the Atlantic Ocean, and south to the Gulf of Mexico. Voyageurs National Park in northern Minnesota is the largest water-based park in the national park system. One of the most well-known and identifiable water sources is the Great Mississippi River. And it starts right here in our great state at Itasca State Park up north. The upper Mississippi River is joined by the Minnesota River at Fort Snelling in the Twin Cities. The Mississippi runs through the entire country and then flows into the Gulf of Mexico. But it starts here, and that's what's important. Another killer pastime, besides fishing and boating, things like that, is hunting. According to ExploreMinnesota.com, some commonly hunted game includes waterfowl, turkey, pheasant, geese, and deer. Most humans in Minnesota hunt for food, recreation, or for pest control. Something big here in Minnesota is something called trophy hunting. You can't go to a cabin around that doesn't have a deer or 2 mounted on the walls. Trophy hunting is the selective seeking of wild game. This falls under the category of hunting for recreational purposes. Don't forget to wear your orange this hunting season. Ice fishing is another huge attraction here in Minnesota. If there were ice on the lake, I would show you. Did you know that Minnesota is actually the ice fishing capital of the world? There are many different ways to ice fish. One is with hooks and lines, and then another is with spears and whatever suits you. We have a lot of excellent cuisine here. You wouldn't think that Minnesota would be the best place to come for a variety of foods, but actually, it turns out it is. A common food here is the walleye. This is because fishing is such an integral part of the Minnesota culture, that there are just an abundance of fish around. Another common meal here in Minnesota is hot dish. Now, hot dish can be made a variety of ways. One of these ways is with tater tots, which is the most common form, the tater tot hot dish. Hot dish is a great cause for people to get together. You often see it at potlucks and barbecues, family get-togethers, anything like that. You know there's definitely going to be 1 or maybe 2 different flavors of hot dish. Probably one of the most important foods in Minnesota is wild rice. Now, wild rice, we eat it with everything. If you don't like wild rice, you're screwed. We put wild rice in hot dish, we put wild rice with fish, we put wild rice with pasta. You name it, there's wild rice probably put in it. There are many different things to do out in the great wide unknown up here in northern Minnesota. There's so many different wildlife to see, different wildlife to shoot or catch with your fishing rod, that you can never get bored on our various woods and lakes and rivers.
Why do I believe that Minnesota is the best state? The social services offered by our beautiful state are nothing less than top-notch. Today, I would like to emphasize on the education and the healthcare systems offered by the state of Minnesota. Let's start with the education. According to mn.gov in 2016, Minnesota was in the top 3 for high school graduation rates, with a rate of 92.9% of high school students graduating. The ACT, a standardized test used in all states, is a very strong indicator of educational success. Among the 17 states that offer the test to all of their students, 100% of them, Minnesota led the pack with a composite score of 21.5, as opposed to the national average of 20.5. These high marks are not by coincidence. Minnesota was also the first state to offer the PSEO program to its students. The PSEO program is a post-secondary education plan offered to high school students that they can get free college and college credits for having a high GPA in high school. This program itself has led to the increase in associate and arts degrees passed out to students and overall post-secondary success. In 2016, Minnesota was 12th in the U.S. for students obtaining a bachelor's degree or higher. If you were from Minnesota, you'd be smart enough to realize how incredible our education system is. Even better than our education system is the healthcare system. In Minnesota, access to care is more convenient than in many other states. If you're on government-based healthcare, in Minnesota, you're able to go to any clinic and receive care. This is because we have clinic-based healthcare program providers rather than individual doctor's offices. This also helps because an individual doctor's office can jack the prices on certain care while clinics are much more standardized with their billing. MNsure was put in place in 2010 along with the Affordable Care Act to ensure that everybody had accessibility to healthcare programs. While using MNsure, this program aligns people with the appropriate healthcare programs that they'll need to fit their income and their overall needs. This is all according to MNsure.org. You cannot talk about the Minnesota healthcare without talking about the Mayo Clinic. Based in Rochester, the Mayo Clinic is known worldwide and has treated patients from all over the world. They are at the forefront of medical research, including but not limited to neuroscience, Alzheimer's, biomedical ethics, and various types of cancers. In 2017, the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota was recognized as the best clinic in the nation by U.S. News and World Report. How many other states can boast the best clinic in the entire nation? In closing, we may have a lot of trees and lakes, but the structure of our social service programs is what really makes our state the best. I hope the next time that you break an arm, it's in Minnesota, because our clinics are cheaper, cleaner, and our nurses are smarter.
Another reason why Minnesota is such a great state to live in is its art scene. The Twin Cities has been called a hotbed of creativity by a number of big names, and the state as a whole embraces art as a part of everyday life. According to the Minnesota State Arts Board, 95% of Minnesotans believe that art is an important and integral part of education. The Twin Cities has a higher rate of attendance to live art and culture events than even Chicago or New York, according to the Minnesota Compass. Places Rated Almanac ranks the Twin Cities as 8th in 354 metropolitan areas in the United States and Canada for its variety in the arts and the participation in the arts. Minnesota has a wide variety of ways to access these fine arts. As I mentioned, the Twin Cities is a huge cultural hub. The Minneapolis Institute of Arts, which is one of the biggest art galleries in the state, boasts over 500,000 visitors a year and 89,000 art objects. The Walker Arts Center isn't far from there, and it is one of the 5 most visited contemporary and modern art museums in the United States. We have plenty of performing arts in Minnesota too. The Minnesota Orchestra was founded in 1903 and is based out of the Minnesota Orchestra Hall in Minneapolis. Minnesota also has one of the highest ratios of live theater per capita. The Twin Cities and the entire state is filled with theaters and different performing arts opportunities. The Twin Cities isn't the only place where the arts are a big deal. All over the state, even the small towns, there's a huge emphasis put on art as an essential part of life. Even rural areas are receiving a lot of love and funding for the arts, according to Nonprofit Quarterly. In our own Lakes area, there's a ton of art to be found. The Crossing Arts Alliance has just relocated to a new location downtown where artists can showcase their work in galleries throughout the year, sell their work, and teach other people how to do their work, or do work that's similar to theirs. Right next door to that is the base for the Lakes Area Music Festival, which brings world-renowned classical musicians into the Lakes area throughout the summer and the whole year. The Franklin Arts Center is an old school building converted into an arts center where up to 25 live-work artists reside. It has tons of space for creative businesses to operate and communities such as the Stage North Community Theater to function. It's proven that art is hugely beneficial to a vibrant and fulfilled life, and Minnesota is chock full of art. So come live in Minnesota.
From the Twin Cities to the backcountry, Minnesota has some of the most interesting architecture of all the states. It's hands down the best place to live if you love seasons. We have cold winters of about 43 inches of snow per year, according to USA.com. This puts Minnesota as the 11th snowiest state. You can spend the snowy winters right here in your cabin in Brainerd, Minnesota. Or you can spend them in the middle of downtown Minneapolis, St. Paul. Skywalks enable people to walk building to building without having to brave the cold. Now don't think Minnesota is the cold pit of despair. We have temperate springs and falls and pretty hot summers too. Minnesota is unique because just 2 hours away from a large metropolitan city like Minneapolis, St. Paul, you have remote cabins and lakes like this. A nifty bit of architecture we have here, right in Minnesota, is the Mall of America. As its name suggests, it's the largest mall in the United States. It's so big it has roller coasters and a theme park inside it. These aren't baby rides either. The ones at Camp Snoopy will give even the most experienced theme park rider a thrill. Fun fact, the Mall of America doesn't actually have a central heating system. It keeps its comfy 70-degree heating system through solar windows, 1.2 million square feet of them, and the body heat of the 40 million visitors per year. This is coming from the Mall of America website itself. And look at me out here in Whipple Beach, enjoying this extreme beautiful wilderness, just 2 hours away from the metropolitan Twin City area. Minnesota is the best of both worlds. You can live in a big city or a small town and enjoy either one. Exploring the concrete jungle or the Mississippi River. And Livability.com rated Minneapolis-St. Paul Metro as the second greenest city in the United States of America. Also, I'm very cold. Not really. Eli, say hello.
Hello.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Well, I'm Brooke, and I'm here today to talk about some real Minnesota stereotypes. They can either be, really accurate or way off, but you know what? We have to deal with them either way, so let's just talk about them today. Probably when you think about Minnesota, you think about Minnesota nice, which being conceited about your opinions, not being super angry outright, and being extremely passive-aggressive, but this stuff can all change later on. Like, once you're in a safe space, like at home, or like with your family, or with some really close friends, Minnesotans blow up a little bit and can get really angry and rant for hours on end. But I guess that's just what we do. As a Minnesotan, we really try not to make a big fuss. And one of the ways we do this is expressing all of our positives through extreme negatives. This can go from talking about the weather to a dead relative to all across the board. A good example of this is definitely talking about the weather. A Minnesotan, instead of saying, "Oh, it's a great day, this is a good time," they would say, "Wow, can't complain. Not too bad, not too shabby. It could be a lot worse." This is very important to note here if you're around here. You constantly need to be aware of your opinions and how they will offend people. Or if you're way too happy about something, everybody will look at you weird, being like, "Do you not know that life sucks pretty bad up here in the cold north?" You know, that movie Fargo. It's not very accurate, but it's still pretty good. You know, one thing Minnesotans really can't get over is how the rest of the world calls it duck, duck, goose. You know, we got it right. The original origin is Swedish, and it's anka, anka, gra, anka, which directly translates to duck, duck, gray duck. So all you people who say goose, you're wrong. You know, and it's spelled with an A, not an E. If you spell it with an E, you need to get out of my country. Or at least this is what Heather Brown says at CBS News. It's not the only thing that's just used in Minnesota. According to the Dictionary of Regional English, we are the only state, along with Iowa and Wisconsin, that use the word budge. You know, like budge in front of a line of somebody. A lot of things are actually regional in language. Another one being the word that you use for a carbonated beverage. We up here in Minnesota use pop, but there's also the options of soda, soda pop, cola. It was determined in 2003 in a survey by Alan McConaughey, that is now on Minnesota Connected, that it is undeniably pop in Minnesota, and if you ask for anything else, especially if you ask for cola, you're going to get Coca-Cola or something that you didn't ask for. Because up here we say pop, and if you say anything else, go back to Wisconsin where you belong. If you go to town throughout Minnesota, you'll see a few things. One of these definitely being good feeling of community. Our extreme local pride creates into great effect when we had the Minnesota High School Hockey League, especially because it had a bigger attendance than the National Hockey League. We set a new attendance score from 129,000 to 135,000 according to Nathan Wells at Ashby National Hockey League. We are the state of hockey. Obviously that's with hockey, but it's a lot of other things like football, volleyball, gymnastics, all the above. It seems like a lot of times, not just parents, but other people in the community will get really involved with students, especially, and their sports, which makes it really interesting and nice to live here, and I think that's another reason why we're known as Minnesota Nice, is because we're so involved with each other and we actually do care about each other succeeding. And I know, as Mary is going to talk about, is how even in the arts, it's not just with sports, it's an all-around kind of thing, which makes Minnesota communities, especially in smaller towns, so welcoming and like fun to live here, along with the great fishing in the summer. Picture this, you're driving down the highway, a car passes you, and you see each other and you make eye contact. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna ignore them? No, that's rude. You live in Minnesota, you have to be nice. So you want to master this thing. It's called the Minnesota Wave. You want to lean back, put your hand on the steering wheel, and if you know them, you want to give them the one finger. The one finger is an art form here in Minnesota. If you know, if it's casual and you think you know who they are, give them two fingers. If it's even a complete stranger but you make eye contact, you're suddenly great acquaintances because eye contact is creepy. So, two fingers. Now, the only time you can ever use this next wave is if you are a farmer and you are in a tractor. Other than that, it's sinful. If you take your entire hand off the steering wheel and you just raise your hand. You don't even wave, you just raise your hand. Now, if you do this and you're just in a car, you are an absolute maniac. And everybody can tell. They know. This person will remember for years that you gave them a full-handed wave. And how dare you do that? The Minnesota goodbye. You're chilling at a buddy's house. Maybe you and like a friend are there with each other, and instead of when you want to leave, you just get up and leave and say, like, I gotta go. What happens is, it's a slow but steady process. So they're like, nah, you can never leave. Oh, it's getting dark out. Oh, the roads are terrible because we got 5 feet of snow 2 days ago. Like, you should definitely stay. Like, don't worry about it. A few more hours isn't gonna hurt. The weather might mellow out. Like, who knows? Like, it could get a lot better. There's a great possibility that if you don't set in stone that you have to leave by the second time, that you will be spending the night. And maybe even a week, depending on the weather. When you do finally get the opportunity to leave, you're all going to move over to the kitchen,
where your host wants you to take home all of the possible leftovers they can cram into your car. And you're going to have to say yes because you're a Minnesotan and you have to. Also, food is expensive, so why not? And so then you're going to stand in the kitchen, and as they're packing up bags of food, you're going to keep talking. And you're going to talk in that kitchen for at least 3 hours. And if you can finally escape, you're going to get out and you're going to get in your car and you're going to start that car and you're going to sit in that car. And your host is going to lean on the window of your car. And they're going to talk to you for even longer. And after you've wasted a full tank of gas sitting there having hour-long conversation as they're just leaning over your window, you'll eventually start to pull out of the driveway. They're going to follow and they're going to wave. They're going to full hand wave. And as you're leaving, you have to also wave the entire time until you cannot see them anymore. But once you get into your own driveway, you know you've finally escaped the Minnesota goodbye. And on that note, see y'all.
Hey, welcome back. I know you just heard a lot about how Minnesota is the best state, but while it is pretty great, it still might not be the best, but we're still pretty close to the top. We got our great things like our medical, our architecture, all this stuff, all this amazing stuff you just heard about. And honestly, that really makes us stand out more than anybody else. And I really hope that you consider moving to Minnesota or staying here for the rest of your life. But that's the end of my talk. Good night. Please go away.